them out like you can. Anyhow, okay. Just a few more details of the mechanics of that, and then let's get down to what we're here to talk about. The idea of working on an alien planet in such an alien environment is intriguing. We did it. It was wonderful. It's hard work. People asked, were you really in awe? Yes, you were really in awe, but you didn't have time to think about it. You were working so hard all the time. We designed a timeline for the mission that was about 120% of human capability, because we expected some equipment might fail and we didn't want to be without something to do. Well, if nothing fails, we had to work to 120% capability for the hours that we were on the moon. We were there 34 hours, walking on the surface in 2 different periods, about 4.5 hours each. Well, actually, close to 10 hours altogether. And we took several thousand pictures. We brought back 98 pounds of lunar material. And by all accounts, did a superb job of lunar geology and set up a host of experimental data collectors that for the next 10 years or so were sending telemetry signals back to Earth on the data that was being collected. Now, Apollos 15, 16, and 17 followed on our mission. And they did have the lunar rover. They were able to go further afield than we were on foot. And it's unfortunate that the last 3 flights, 18, 19, and 20, were canceled. The public said, okay, what have you done for us today? It's different. And Congress said, you're spending too much money. So 18, 19, and 20, I was supposed to be commander of Apollo 19, or 20, one of the 2. And we didn't get to do those. But it was a glorious program. We did begin to take a look at what it is like to get out of this planet and see ourselves from afar. Now let's go back to this experience we're talking about and the aftermath of that. The experience I've discovered in later years as I talked to the other men, that we all had virtually the same experience. But because of our different background, our different education, our different belief system, we expressed it differently. Myself being a MIT PhD, a test pilot, more oriented toward rational thinking, started asking the question, what in the world is going on here? Why, if I am out in space, look back at Earth like this, and see it in all of this grandeur, and I'm having this powerful, mountaintop, euphoric, blissful, ecstatic experience. Why is that? What's going on? Now, Lynn did describe it correctly. The question was, the molecules of this body and that spacecraft and my partners were manufactured or prototyped in some ancient generation of stars. Okay, that's good intellectual knowledge. That's the way cosmology thinks matter was formed. But those are my molecules. And all of a sudden, that was a different thing. You're feeling it at a deep, emotional, personal level. Wow. My companions, not on my flight, but on the others, Charlie Duke, for example, Apollo 16, Jim Irwin, Apollo 15, both of them were very rooted in their Christian belief system. And to them, it was looking on the face of God, having that experience, a really deep mystical experience. I don't use those words, I didn't use those words. But I came back full of amazement and curiosity to understand better what was happening, because I had a totally different view now of what this universe, ourselves, this planet, is all about. Remember, you get down to the nitty-gritty, we're on a rather average, mundane planet, in a rather way out on the spiral arm of a very mundane, average galaxy that's one of billions of galaxies, in a universe that, as far as we can tell, is at least 15 billion light years across. That's pretty wild. And until this century, our last century, and we have the sort of telescopes that we now have available to us, we really didn't have any indication at all just how humongous, how complicated, how utterly amazing is this cosmos that we're a tiny, minuscule planet. I get very emotional when I look through telescopes, when I see the pictures of galaxies forming. I see great giant nebulae and clouds from the huge telescopes, just attesting to the utter magnificence and mystery of the universe that we're in. I came back from that experience, and as soon as my obligations to NASA were over, I left NASA, determined to try to understand more about what I had experienced. And the very first thing I did was to start to look up about consciousness in the scientific literature. And obviously there wasn't any. Zero. Because I realized in space that it was likely that our scientific cosmology, the story of who we are and how we got here, as told by science, was incomplete and likely flawed. And as told by our traditional cosmologies, was archaic and probably flawed. And as a spacefaring civilization now, a new spacefaring civilization, we best take a new look at these questions and see if we can come up with an answer any different, or any better, or any more complete than our predecessors, our ancestors had, regardless of what culture. So I started my research, and since there wasn't anything in science, I turned to the mystical literature. I don't mean the religious literature, the mystical literature, the deep, essential literature. And after a bit of search, I had a team in Houston working with me from the Rice University in Houston, a few people that were good scholars. And very shortly we discovered in the ancient Sanskrit a name for the experience I'd had in space. It's called Salvakapa Samadhi. The idea that you can see things in their separateness, but experience them emotionally, inwardly, in their unity, completeness, and singularity, accompanied by bliss. Wow. So I started digging into the literature of all cultures. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, most of you are aware, if you do that, you'll find that the description of transcendent experiences is in every culture in the world, buried in the mystical literature. So let's call those experiences the esoteric experience. The problem is when we start to explain it, it's so hard to explain that it gets all sorts of cultural, linguistic trappings peculiar to that culture. Let's call that the exoteric. The exoteric is religion, the basis of religion. The esoteric is what really happens. And the esoteric is the same the world over, because we're all humans. So many of us have had these types of experiences. And the exoteric is what we fight about. Whose God's the best? And that is, as course, anathema to the deep mysteries and the deep wisdom of every tradition, because every tradition, in its deepest knowledge, treats us in harmony with nature, in harmony with each other, love and brothership and brotherhood. And it's amazing how we humans can mess it up when we start thinking about it and getting it culturally political. And that is precisely the politics of the transcendent experience, is what happens in our religions. As I made these studies, it became obvious to me that if the experience, the esoteric, powerful, subjective experiences were truly the same the world over, then that was something science could get its hands on. We should be able, if we were doing it all the same, just like our vision, our subjective experience of any sort, we should be able to do something with that in science, except here in the Western world, since the times of René Descartes and Isaac Newton in the 17th century. René Descartes came to the conclusion, as a prince of the Roman Church, that body, mind, physicality, and spirituality belong to two independent realms of reality. It did one good thing for us. It allowed science to arise without the oversight of the Inquisition, which had a habit of burning people at the stake and putting them on torture racks to extract their confessions of heresy. And so for 400 years in the Western world, we have lived with this duality, this notion that body, mind, physicality, spirituality, science, religion have to walk two different sides of the street. And it only began in the early part of last century, 20th century, with the beginning of quantum mechanics and the study of the deepest aspects of matter itself. And then Einstein's wonderful paper in 1905 that said light has two aspects, both particle and wave aspects. And we very quickly after that came to the conclusion, well, if light has two aspects, so does everything else. All matter, both particle and wave. And that led to the formal discipline we now call quantum mechanics. And it became apparent very, very quickly in quantum mechanics in the 20s that mind was somehow involved pretty deeply in all of that. Unfortunately, we in the West, the physics community, has tended to sweep that conclusion under the rug for 75 years. And to believe that quantum reality didn't have much to do with our scale size, and that it really only pertained to subatomic matter. And we now know, at least some of us know, not everybody knows, that that's just dead wrong. And it's been taking a while to convince the scientific community that the properties discovered in the quantum world, and to be specific about what they are, and I'll describe them a little bit later, and tomorrow we'll talk about the movement. The properties of entanglement, non-locality, coherence, and resonance are precisely what is necessary to explain much of what we humans experience in our mind processes, our subjective processes, and even in our body itself, which is a quantum object, and it's not just a classical Newtonian object, the way it's been described mostly in Western medicine for at least all of the 20th century.